Hey there, all you sons and bitches! Chucky the Killer Doll here for your viewing pleasure. Now the schmucks at Round the Clock Frights begged me to come and be in their crappy little review of the Child's Play remake to talk about that new asshole who's stolen my image.
Chucky.
What the fuck you interrupting me for?
We already did the review of the remake, and we did a review of the original too.
What? But you said we were reviewing the latest killer doll film. What other killer doll movie could you possibly be talking about? Oh, you talking about that bitch Annabelle? You know she's terrible in bed. She wouldn't move at all.
Okay, Chucky, you're done.
Finally got that little bastard to leave.
He's Chucky, the killer doll. How did you manage that?
Oh, easy. I just told him there was someone outside for him to kill. I told him Taylor Swift was waiting for him outside. He ran out the door because I know he's really been wanting to take a shot at T Swift.
No.
You know, speaking of lifeless dolls, speaking of lifeless dolls, let's talk about the new Annabelle movie.
Absolutely. Welcome, boils and ghouls.
Welcome to Round the Clock Frights. I am Josh.
I am Thor.
So, Thor.
And today we are reviewing Annabelle Comes Home.
Yes, otherwise known
Been
as...
gone for so long.
Otherwise known as Annabelle, Adventures in Babysitting. So, Thor, I just gotta ask you.
Okay.
So, the last movie that we reviewed on Round the Clock Frights was the Child's Play remake.
Okay.
You did not go see the Child's Play remake, unfortunately. So, now that you've seen Annabelle Comes Home, do you regret not seeing the Child's Play remake and seeing this instead?
I don't know. You know, I got a good nap during this one. Okay, so real quick for those of you guys watching, spoilers, because although some people are able to keep their mouths shut about plot details, I am Tom Holland.
Yeah, she's the Tom Holland of this team, so we're going to go into spoilers. So real quick, just some quick initial thoughts on this movie. I did not really enjoy this movie, to be completely honest.
It felt like... Okay, so real quick, just a brief recap on the plot. No spoilers too much there. Annabelle Comes Home is the further adventures of Ed and Lorraine Warren. Although this time it's pretty much about their daughter and her babysitter and her babysitter's friend. Yeah. So basically,
it's a Halloween sequel.
Ed and Lorraine Warren are demonologists that are at the center of the Conjuring universe, created by James Wan. Right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm not good with names. And basically, these are real life people who allegedly were demonologists and did all these crazy, crazy things. And they did have a house in their house. They did have a house. They did have a room in their home where they kept artifacts and tokens from all of these different investigations, exorcisms, and things like that. The most famous of which is a Raggedy Ann doll named Annabelle, who has to be kept behind special glass and blessed once a week by a priest in order to keep its evil contained.
Yeah, so these Annabelle movies are inspired by true events. And just real quick, just my thoughts overall on the Conjuring universe. I have a really big problem with these movies.
Okay.
3 of them have been decent. The first 2 Conjuring movies directed by James Wan, and Annabelle Creation, which was directed by David F. Sandberg. The rest of these movies honestly don't feel like actual artistic pieces. They feel like manufactured pieces to me.
It felt like maybe a slightly more intense episode of Goosebumps.
Because, like I was saying...
Are You Afraid of the Dark level, Goosebumps.
Yeah, and I was thinking that too, because the scares in these movies, and not just this one, but like in most of these Conjuring movies... Not only are they predictable, but they're safe.
Okay,
These are very safe, manufactured scares.
So at one point, one of the babysitters goes into the haunted room with all these things, and I am queuing like a couple of seconds before each and everything that happened in there, and Josh is sitting beside me going, "Damn it!"
Yes. Well, you're jumping ahead a little bit.
Okay.
But honestly, these movies have so much potential because we have a horror cinematic universe. There are so many things that they could do. There are so many ideas they could incorporate into these movies. But like I was saying earlier, most of them just feel cheap, manufactured. Most of them are made for less than $10 million, and they are reliant on the safest, most, dare I say, mainstream audience-friendly scares.
They really are. And the other thing something that you mentioned just now with they have this amazing universe that they could play with.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many more interesting stories in the Warrens' repertoire, whether you believe it to be true or not, that they could get into. I mean, I'm curious about the samurai armor.
See, therein lies the problem with all three of these Annabelle movies. The first Annabelle, released in 2014. The second one, Annabelle Creation, which was 2017, and now this one. Annabelle barely does anything in these movies. These Annabelle movies are excuses to showcase these new monsters and demons that they could potentially use in future spin-offs. She barely does anything.
She really doesn't. Well, I will say there was that one scene in the room with the little girl with the circular wheel. Although that was a very safe scare, that was at least her doing something.
So now we can get into the plot of this movie. I'll let you get into the meat of the story.
The meat of the story.
Yes.
Okay, so basically what you have is the beginning of the movie opens up with the end of an Annabelle movie. I think it was Annabelle 1.
No, it was,
it's not.
No, the opening scene in this movie was also the opening scene in The Conjuring. So it takes place after the very first scene in The Conjuring, where Ed and Lorraine Warren, played by Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson, are visiting these young nurses who are living with the Annabelle doll, and they take the doll from the nurses to put in their haunted artifacts room.
Wasn't the nurses in one of the Annabelles, though?
They were in, the very first scenes of the other Annabelle movie. The very first scenes of the other Annabelle movies were essentially the same.
Oh.
Just pulling in the first scene from the first Conjuring.
I didn't really pay attention because I was bored. Sorry. Anyways, so basically we have these nurses coming in. Ed and Lorraine are telling them that the doll is not necessarily possessed. It is a conduit for other spirits.
Mm-hmm.
Drawing spirits, demons, and allowing it to be like a doorway between here and the really mean and nasty hereafter.
Mm-hmm.
So they decide, ask the nurses, hey, can we take your doll? And the nurses are, yes, please, do that.
And here we have this opening scene where the Annabelle doll is in the back of their car. They're driving down this lonely stretch of road at night, and of course, what happens? The director.
Wait.
Okay, what?
First, they stumble on an accident where we see a breathtaking display of Lorraine's power by her spotting a girl standing on the side of the road.
And then they're driving down this lonely stretch of road at night by themselves. The director looked into his How to Make Horror Movies for Dummies handbook, and he fills the goddamn street with just
so much fog.
So much fog. I swear to God, I thought I was watching John Carpenter's movie, The Fog.
Oh, I was making jokes about the mist.
There is so much fog in this opening scene.
Oh,
it was
my
incredible.
Lord.
And here's another thing too.
What?
There are awkward bits of humor sprinkled throughout this movie, and there was the first example of the humor in this movie was in this opening scene.
Yeah.
Where their car suddenly breaks down, and Ed gets out of the car to check the engine, and for some reason, Lorraine, she unfolds the map, and then she puts the map up against the window. Very awkwardly, she places the map up against the window, and the camera is slowly pushing in.
You think there's going to be a scare when you pull it down, or maybe like a person just standing there looking at her because, she's supposed to see ghosts?
But she awkwardly takes the map away from the window, and there's nothing there. So I guess we're supposed to get kind of a nervous chuckle out of that. It was very bizarre. It was very weirdly staged.
Anyways, we find out that the doll is attracting. Of course, they broke down right by a cemetery. Perfect place to break down with Annabelle.
It happens all the time.
All the time. That in cornfields. And then
in cornfields.
You don't want to break down your cornfield. Everybody knows that.
So what happens next?
So what happens next is basically hijinks ensue. Annabelle tries to kill Ed. It doesn't work. They get home and they're trying to bless the doll so that way, the evil will stop. The room's starting to go crazy. The monkey and it's like, and then
there's a toy monkey.
Well, that toy monkey's in the Conjuring too.
It was also in Toy Story 3.
Or Conjuring also, not Conjuring 2.
And Toy Story 3.
And Toy Story 3.
Great
And just
cameo.
as terrifying. Thank you. Thank you for Pixar for allowing them to borrow that. And then after that, they realize that the blessing isn't stopping it. Of course, the priest is so enthusiastic this entire time. I'm sorry. The priest is over here trying to do some kind of exorcism blessing thing on apparently a demonic doll. And he's like, God, I'm tired. Yes.
Well, it's just another day in the office because, they're inside their haunted artifacts room, which is full of these possessed...
Okay, and can I just say this real quick? Yes, let's bring the conduit doll in a room full of possessed, cursed, haunted, and just generally evil things. And let's put her in there.
If
it's
this
gonna work.
Okay, they do. The characters do explain that in the first Conjuring movie. Ed and Lorraine Warren basically say the reason they keep all these haunted artifacts in one place is so they can keep the rest of the world safe.
Well, that.
However, if this was the first Conjuring movie you saw and you weren't aware of that reasoning, these characters would come across as complete idiots.
Even with that explanation, I'm still coming across with the complete idiots thing because why would you stick a battery into a machine like that? And that's basically what you're doing with Annabelle if you believe in that stuff is according to that universe, you're taking something that draws in all of that energy and you're putting it in the middle of something that, would use that energy to very, very bad results. Which, guess what happens?
The rest of the plot.
So basically, you have their daughter, Judy, who is starting to develop the same gifts as her mom. She's being followed around by a creepy priest.
I could make a little boy joke, but...
He was following her, so...
Yeah, he was following her, so it's okay. It's okay.
No, it's not.
It's okay.
Basically, this creepy priest looks like... Okay, you remember that Pope that looked like he was possessed?
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked like him. So anyways, we go and she's having all these issues at school, bullies, blah, blah, blah. She has a really cool babysitter. And I do have to stop here and say that's one thing that I did like about this. For going to so many horror movies where the protagonists are just awful people and you're like, please just die. You are a pathetic waste of human flesh. These people are actually pretty cool.
They were likable, but the characterizations were still very thin. Because what is the main babysitter's motivation? She wants to date the cute boy who works at the convenience store.
I have to disagree. Even though the character development wasn't necessarily all that great, the characters were likable. You wanted them to come out okay.
To a point.
And I'm sorry, when Mary Ellen comes barreling out of that area where you figured she probably got killed, she comes barreling out and tackling the demon that's about to stab Judy. You're like, yeah!
So you have the main babysitter, you have
Mary Ellen.
the daughter, Judy, played by
daughter Judy,
played by McKenna Grace, a very talented young actress.
She did an okay job.
She was also in Haunting of Hill House, an amazing Netflix series.
One.
And then you have the babysitter's friend, played by a young Sarah Silverman. That's what I was thinking the entire goddamn movie.
She did have that vibe.
Who at first comes across as a complete moron because if I can explain what happens from here.
Yeah, go.
Okay, so the babysitter's best friend, played by a young Sarah Silverman, she comes over. She's curious about their haunted artifacts room. So of course,
she came over to get into the artifacts room. There was a purpose.
There was a purpose, but here's the thing. I understand the purpose, but what happens is that eventually she does get into the haunted artifacts room by herself. We discover what her real purpose is. It's because she lost her father in a car accident, so she wants to see if she can summon him inside this haunted artifacts room. But then what happens? single-handedly the most moronic thing that occurs in this movie. The Annabelle doll inside the case tips over.
Right, after
so
she asks for a sign.
she goes over to the case and, she looks at the warning signs. Do not open this goddamn case. Of course, she immediately opens the goddamn case so she can, fix...
Right the doll.
Right the doll.
And then she doesn't lock it back up. She just walks away.
And the rest of the movie, creepy shenanigans.
The doll falls out. So, honestly, and then, with all the creepy shenanigans, again, those creepy shenanigans were very, very safe.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody dies.
Nobody dies.
There was a moment where you thought that somebody was going to die, but then they didn't.
Right.
And you were like, okay.
So the rest of this movie is essentially an excuse for the filmmaker to set up these new monsters and to just have spooky things occur, like in the dark with these new monsters.
Now, there were a couple of effects that I liked, no matter how cheesy they were, and they were cheesy.
Wait, real quick.
They were very cliche.
Let's explain real quick what the new monsters are.
Okay, so one of the new monsters, obviously you have Annabelle.
Mm-hmm.
So she has, a couple of forms, a weird white child with braids that you kind of want to slap because she has stank face all the time. And then some big, gigantic lady that looks like they're trying to rip off La Llorona.
I thought that was La Llorona at first.
Yeah, no, because it was a white chick under there. La Llorona is Mexican.
They do take place in the same universe.
True.
So that's why I thought at first it was her. But
yeah, so some white chick that has a bridal gown that makes you go crazy and kill people.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the ferryman. The ferryman was actually one of my favorites.
The ferryman?
The ferryman. At first I was thinking fairy like Fairy, and I'm like, what the hell? And then I realized it was fairy like, River Styx, the fairy. And I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. So they have the ferryman. They also have
a CGI Goosebumps werewolf.
Oh, that totally was the Goosebumps vibe. Again, not Are You Afraid of the Dark? Goosebumps.
Because the cute boyfriend, at one point, the cute boyfriend comes over. He's playing a song on the acoustic guitar.
Badly, but it was cute. It was so sweet.
He gets enveloped in, again, more goddamn fog.
God. There's more ways to build. Okay, I'm just going to put this out there right now. Love James Wan. Love, I know how hard directing and all that kind of stuff is. Fog is the cheap man's use of shadow and light. It's because they cannot control shadow and light, so they use fog to just blanket it. And more tension is built when you have that play between light and shadow. Mm-hmm. He did not use that effectively. He was just like, fog!
Well, James Wan didn't direct this movie.
Well, yeah.
It was the screenwriter.
James Wan was still, wasn't he like the producer or something like that?
He was the producer, but the man who directed this one, he was the screenwriter of previous Annabelle movies. This is his directorial debut. His name is Gary Doberman.
Okay, then he needed instruction on how to use shadow and light because blanketing everything with fog actually kills tension and doesn't build it up.
The direction in this movie is extremely pedestrian.
Yeah.
You can tell that it's made by someone who has never been behind a camera before. Most of the setups in this movie are setups we have seen in a million other horror movies. It's the cheap trick where the camera slowly pans to the left and there's nothing there. It pans back to the right and suddenly there's something spooky that jumps out. Like a character. Well,
and the thing is, they did that move so many times that I was getting seasick. So they would pan this way, nothing there. Pan this way, nothing there. Is it going to be there? Is it going to be there? Oh, you found me! Mm-hmm. That was pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the directing in this was incredibly standard. And not just that, but like some of the technical aspects of this movie. There were certain shots that were so underlit and so grainy.
Well, I think, okay, so with the underlit and grainy, I think he was trying to go for that 1970s aesthetic, kind of like Ouija 2.
Right.
But he missed the mark. And there were some things, speaking of trying to go for that 1970s aesthetic, They did a really good job with the costuming. They did a really good job, like when they were making cake, to make sure it was the old cake mix, the old beaters and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then they pull me out of it by having brand new pans from Michael's that you could tell were totally modern pans.
I think you were literally the only one who walked out of this theater and had a problem with the
the baking implements.
The baking. Well, again, that brings it back to what I was saying earlier, is that more than half of these Conjuring movies, they just don't feel like much effort was put into them, because I swear to God, especially the most recent ones, like The Nun, The Curse of La Llorona, the first Annabelle movie in 2014, they only have like 4 main characters. There are also only 1 or 2 locations.
There's a lot, yeah, there's a lot more that they could do with this universe.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we both agree on that.
To the movie. Yeah, they are honestly just going the easy route.
They are going the easy route, but the easy route makes them money, and I can't be mad at them for that. You've got a movie for under $10 million. You're getting this amazing buzz when it comes to all of the money that you're raking in and how many people go and watch it. I mean, this movie was actually had some pretty good reviews out there.
I would have to disagree with that, because if you go the easy route and you just keep making the same thing over and over again, audiences are eventually going to get tired, and of course you're going to have to force yourself to put in more effort. But at this point, I don't think they're putting in as much effort as they should.
How many Saw movies were there?
Well, the Saw movies...
How many Jasons? I mean, they don't even call them Friday the 13th anymore. They call them Jason X.
Yeah, but even in those franchises, I mean, Friday the 13th, Jason went to outer space. You know, he went to hell. He had a crossover with Freddy Krueger. These movies are all starting to feel very, very similar. Let's talk about the final act of this movie, which was just utterly riveting. So... God damn. So they're getting bombarded by all these evil spirits. And
they actually make a couple of smart choices though. And I do have to give those characters credit. The babysitter, as soon as she realizes something's going on, she goes to grab the girl. She goes to grab Judy. Does not stop until she's able to bust in and grab the girl, gets her away from the demon or whatever, gets her downstairs, immediately calls mom. Knows calling the cops ain't gonna do so much. Let me call mom. Of course, Annabelle intercepts the call, but
Mm-hmm. So what is their big plan at the end of the movie? It's just
put the doll back in the box.
Yeah, they need to get the doll. They need to put it back in the case. That is the final showdown of this movie, and it is incredibly rushed because the main babysitter character. There's a point at the end of the movie where she is alone, in this enclosed hallway, where there are cobwebs and there are dead bodies just kind of surrounding her.
With the coins on their eyes.
And we see the Annabelle doll at the end of the hallway, and almost immediately it hard cuts to the little girl alone. And what happens is that the main babysitter suddenly just throws the doll on the floor and it's here, I got it, let's go.
Well, no, she just screams from the darkness. She throws it, take it, run, go put it away. Because she's dealing with the dead bodies that are trying to kill her. Because it's dealing with the ferryman thing.
It's that was easy.
She fought with herself, I guess. Because that looked like her. I don't know. So she goes and she takes it, throws it to the girl. Girl goes to pick it up. The babysitter's friend, who has now been possessed by
young Sarah Silverman,
by the cultural appropriation La Llorona, goes and
the woman in the bridal gown, right?
Basically, goes and tries to kill the little girl, and here comes Mary Ellen from the darkness, tackles her down and starts throwing down with the possessed best friend. I actually like that. I was very happy that they did not have the girl just sit there screaming, going, "Oh my God!" She was like, "Nah, bitch, you coming after my girl? Let's go, throw down."
There was also a very stupid moment though that made absolutely zero sense, at least to me. And let me explain why.
Only one?
Well, let me explain why. Because we're talking about the climax here. Okay, so young Sarah Silverman, like you mentioned, is possessed. She's wearing the bridal gown. what happens is that the main babysitter, Mary Ellen, she turns on a projector. The projector shows footage of Patrick Wilson performing the exorcism in the first Conjuring movie, and for some goddamn reason, the sight of the cross in the video footage is enough to subdue this demon, even though this house is full of crosses everywhere, and these crosses have not done a single thing. Suddenly, we're expected to believe that
It was the video, dude.
it was the stupid video.
And it wasn't even a video, it was like the film.
Yeah, it was just like the film, like being projected like onto the wall. That's what ends up subduing this demon.
I guess.
Footage of a cross.
Know. I don't know. Some people, that didn't make sense to me either. I'm like going, okay, that was definitely a Deus Ex Machina.
Mm-hmm.
That especially since they prefaced it earlier in the movie by starting to play it. And after that, they grab the doll, leave the other person that's being exorcised via tape, go back to the room, the scary room with Annabelle. One girl gets knocked down the demon tries to stop them by sucking out Judy's soul.
In a very cartoonish effect.
And then she, of course, somehow in this cursed room gets a hold of a cross and just like, a vampire movie. But it works. The demon backs off. They try to put Annabelle back in the case, try to shut it, but of course the demonic forces will not allow it to be shut. Mm-hmm. And so they're all trying to force it. Judy's like holding the cross and saying the Lord's Prayer. And best friend, who is now completely free and had time to change and fix her hair, chapstick, is able to get there right in the clutch and help them shut the case. And as soon as the case shuts and it's locked, everything powers down.
And they all live happily ever after. So all in all, I just found Annabelle Comes Home to be another cheap sequel in this franchise. Honestly, it's just exhausting me at this point. Like I was saying earlier, I just am looking for more effort like in these movies. And this movie was a quick buck.
Yeah.
It was a quick buck for the studio because I'm sure they've already made their money back. Yeah. It'll enable them to make more Conjuring spin-offs.
I liked it. It was okay.
If they really explore the deeper mythologies of these monsters, kind of like what they did with Annabelle Creation, instead of just using them for the same goddamn jump scare over and over again, I think there could be something to these movies. But at this point, they're just giving out easy change at this point.
Yeah, I agree. So for Annabelle Comes Home, we're glad you're home. Stay there.
Yes.